Hello, my name is Paula Day. I am a lawyer, retired, and a still working organic farmer in Maine. My my legal career was in commercial law. And in the 1980s, for a short time, I was able to work at a Swedish law firm that handled business contracts between the United States concerns and Russian ministries or Russian concerns, Soviet concerns at the time. It was much like today, a very tense period between the United States and the Soviet Union. I felt, or we felt, those of us doing that work at the time felt that even these little mundane business transactions that we could put together between real people in our country and in the Soviet Union might do something to ameliorate the public tensions that were being expressed. And I hope today that's still happening. I'm a little bit discouraged today to see our business transactions seem now to be mostly commercial or economic competition, and they get plastered over with political causes of one form or another. And I think that's heightening our difficulties in the world. But anyway, that was my beginning experience with my feet on the ground in Russia. And I went the second time in 2019 as a delegate with the Center for Citizens Initiative. In 2019, in 1983, I was impressed by the condition of the Soviet Union because it was exactly what I expected. It was rather grim. In 2019, I could not believe the changes that had occurred in a country that had spent centuries under an authoritarian monarchy, 70 years under an authoritarian socialist regime, 10 years in economic freefall, and had managed to pull itself back together and become a modern, vibrant, bustling capitalist culture. I went to Crimea finally 2 months ago. Unlike Sylvia Demarest's visit that she described, I went with accompanying Sharon Tennyson, and it was a very, very informal visit. We did not meet with ministers or municipal officials, or we did not visit state institutions, and we did not see any journalists. We arrived by car via the Kerch, the new, wonderful, brilliant Kerch Bridge, and we stopped at the ancient fortifications in Kerch to get a good distant view of the bridge. There were no television cameras, no videos. We were just there with the ancient history of Kerch behind us and the stunning modern bridge in front of us. It was a beautiful place. We spent 3 days on the peninsula. We went up the east side to Simferopol, the capital, south to Yalta, west to Sevastopol via Balaclava, and then back up the west side of the peninsula to Simferopol. All on beautiful highways that I was told just 5 years ago were essentially potholes strung together with broken asphalt, but now gorgeous new highways. And we left from the brand new Simferopol airport. I did have the opportunity to meet with a number of Crimean citizens. I was there as an American Jane Q. Public, and they were the Olga Ivan Q. Publics of Russian Crimea. And we discussed what had happened in 2014, the split, and they were most interested in telling me what life is like for them in Crimea today. I would like to just tell you for a minute why it was important for me to go to Crimea and indeed to go to Russia in 2019. The deterioration in U.S.-Russian relations has gone on since Putin came in office has been disturbing, but beginning in 2014 with the coup in Ukraine, the split from Crimea, and then the ongoing catastrophe that went on in the United States for 4 years during the Trump administration, when our relations just completely fell apart, have been distressing and unnecessary, and a great deal, to me, a great deal of false information being put out in all directions that has everyone in the West confused, and little sanity or rationality going on in our foreign affairs. So I was anxious to speak with the Crimeans about how they felt about what was happening there, because we hear nothing about them personally. We hear a great deal about Russian aggression. What I saw in 2014 shocked me. The coup in Maidan released the factions that I did not think I would ever live to see in modern Europe. The neo-Nazis that are identical in appearance to the disciples of Hitler, it stunned me that they would actually be still on the scene, and not just on the scene, but waving flags, wearing the uniforms, strutting, pontificating in ways that I just can't comprehend. I wanted to know how the people of Crimea felt about this. And truthfully, I think my questions were a bit indiscreet. I think they did not really want to talk about it. I think it was shocking to them and almost embarrassing. They did describe how they felt when they saw what was happening in Kiev. They knew what was coming. They could anticipate a bloodbath, and they wanted to secure themselves from it. That was the impetus for their quick referendum and petition to Russia. They were emphatic that there was no invasion, there was no coercion. Russia did not pressure them. They were actually asking to make this move. And it is depicted in the West entirely differently. I also did not get the feeling from them, though, that this was a happy moment. It was almost with unbearable sadness that they spoke of it. Many of them still have family and friends in Ukraine and deep, deep roots in Ukraine, and it was painful. They speak of never being able to go home. One man told me that he's Ukrainian, but he has been living in Crimea for many years, and he participates in public life. He has just learned that there is an arrest warrant out for him in Ukraine. And if he were ever to try to go home, he would be imprisoned. He also told me that if I were ever to go to Ukraine, I would probably be arrested too, just for having associated with him. And this is the sort of existence they're living with their neighbors. I don't know. I find it very, very hard to accept that we are accepting that for these people. Now, they did want to speak, and they were very articulate about their position as it is right now, and it stinks. They are virtual pariahs for as far as the international community is concerned. They're shunned. They are no longer recognized by the international sports organizations or international civic organizations that they belong to. International banks will have nothing to do with them. The credit cards from Western banks by foreign visitors are useless there. The cruise ships and tourists that used to visit from Europe no longer come at a great cost to their economy. And they're angry about it, and you can feel the stress, the uncomfortable feeling of being a unclean, not being accepted by the rest of the world. And it was painful. And at the same time, I mean, and they were very, very articulate. there is no way they want to go back. There is no way they would cave to sanctions, and they will hold on as long as it takes for the rest of the world to recognize them and respect them. So my impressions about Crimea and the Crimeans about Crimea is that it's a gorgeous place and mostly sunny, not always. And very sadly for the people that live there, it is a very, very valuable piece of strategic real estate. My impression of the Crimeans is that they're generous and kind and tough. And my impression of the Russians is that they are very cannily investing heavily in Crimea. They've improved its infrastructure to the point where it is no longer the impoverished backwater that it was while it was a part of Ukraine. And I think the Crimeans appreciate that a great deal. My impression of the West vis-a-vis Crimea and Ukraine is that we got the aggression business all wrong. There was certainly aggression in Ukraine and there is still aggression going on in Ukraine and the Donbass. But what happened in Odessa in 2014, 2 months after Crimea had its referendum, the peaceful demonstrators that were herded into an administration building, locked in, the building set on fire, 47 of them burned to death. This is the bloodbath the Crimeans wanted to avoid. And this is the sort of activity that we are seeing among this faction in Ukraine that is aggression. It is violence and depraved behavior unlike we've seen in Europe since World War II. And I'm shocked that we are in any way supporting a government that will allow that to happen. So I believe Ukrainians, or Crimeans rather, certainly had the right to vote themselves out of the orbit of Ukraine. I know this is an unpopular, well, actually, we talk a lot about the right to self-determination, and it sounds very good, but in fact, most governments shiver at the thought of self-determination also allows your self-determining public to take their real estate with them. We fought a very bloody civil war in this country to preclude half of our population from seceding. And it's difficult for us to allow another country, or allow that to happen in another country, all other strategic interests put aside. But I believe that if a fair look at Crimea's 200 plus year history as part of the Romanov and then the Soviet empires, and its pretty brief 30-year and rather ambiguous inclusion in Ukraine, and its the makeup of its population, its determination not to be a part of Ukraine gives them the right to make their own decisions. I think that if I were a lawyer pushing a case for a country to retrieve a province that had seceded, I'd have better luck representing Mexico trying to retrieve Texas than I would at a fair tribunal than Ukraine trying to retrieve Crimea. So I'm happy to be or call myself a friend of Crimea, just because I think that some of this needs to be said out loud. And I think the narrative we hear in the Western media is not allowing the message for the Ukrainian or the Crimeans to get out at all. This my friendship will mean very, very little to the Crimeans, but for whatever it's worth, I'm happy to speak out.